Gamers. My name is Parker Brandt, and today I will be providing a tutorial on how to transition between the first and third perspective smoothly. So what makes this tutorial a little unique is that not only will we be transitioning from the first person perspective camera to third, but we will also be including a small animation of sorts that will make it appear as if the camera is zooming into the player's head and vice versa. So to firstly demonstrate what we mean, we first have our kitty cat driving around in the third perspective, but let's say we want to transition into a first-person shooter or whatever your function may be. We hit the trigger, and now we're in first person. My game still operates the exact same, but you could definitely modify the code in order to call another script file that would potentially add maybe a crosshair or something along those lines. And we want to go back, we hit it again, and again, and again. And it always maintains the same position, so you never have to worry about losing the original camera's position. So before we hop right into the code, I would like to demonstrate the inspector. All you need to do is specify the transition speed, which is basically how much time in seconds the animation will take to transition from the third to first perspective or vice versa, as well as your first person camera and your third person camera. Now the code. So first, we have the variables that I already discussed previously, which were the first person camera, third person camera, and the transition speed. In addition, we also have numerous private variables which are modified throughout the duration of the code. This include the currently active camera, the boolean which determines whether or not the animation is taking place or not, the original local position of the active camera, and its rotation. And then in addition, I also had to modify this code to keep track of the first and third person's cameras rotation and position regardless of whether or not they were active. This allowed me to do the transition multiple times by saving the relative position of the cameras. What's very important is that regardless of, even if you don't use these assets, you must make the cameras children of your player model. Okay? So just jumping into the code, we first have our start, which just initializes a bunch of stuff. I currently have it set to make the third person camera the default camera. You can change this very easily by making this the first person. And then I disable the first person camera. This is just to make sure we don't have two active cameras and makes the transition a little smoother. This right here is just storing the location of the relative position of the first and third person cameras. Now entering into our onTrigger method. This is where you can modify the code to be a little more flexible. I am making a game where once you reach the end of the level, the camera transitions, which is why I did an onTrigger method, but you could definitely change this to be the update method and then like switch it to be an on-key press and have it correspond to doing this start coroutine method. So we do a start coroutine because we have multiple calls going on at once, and it works best with this, and you can't call this method without the start coroutine method call as well. So at the start of this call, this method call, we say that in transition is true because we don't want to be able to have multiple method calls while this is going on. It would look really messy, and we basically now determine what the new target camera is going to be. This is what the camera is going to transition into. And we just do a little basic conditional here, just checking to see, okay, is this are we currently looking at the first person camera? If so, we'll then make it the third person camera. And if it's not the first person camera, make it the first person camera. I may have meant to say, if it is not the first person camera, which makes the third person camera, make it the first person camera. Hopefully you're following along after all that. And once we've determined what the target camera is, we now set it to be the transform. We now set whatever the target camera is to have the transform values. And so we take its position and rotation and set it to the original local relative position of its respective camera, depending on which value this ended up being. And so this right here is where the kind of animation magic happens. Um, as the distance of the active camera is shifting into the target camera, um, we slurp and lerp the camera over time, um, in order to fix it into the proper location. And this right here just delays the animation, just so that before we call another while loop, we make sure that the camera has moved to its proper location. So once that while loop breaks out, we now update the active camera's position and rotation to be the new local active camera's position and rotation. And then we disable the current active camera, which was the previous camera that was active, and then we turn on the new camera that we just set, and we enable it. And then we say that this animation is concluded, and it's false. So now we can call the animation again if necessary. Hopefully you can apply this into your game. I think it's a really cool transition, and I think it adds a little bit more dynamicism into the game. Thank you very much, gamers. Arrivederci.